Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mr. Sitter podcast with a highly caffeinated Anthony Lacascio this morning coming at you to talk about some football or soccer, depending on who you are. Shit. Good morning, good evening, whenever you're listening or watching this podcast. How's it going? I'm here in the vintage, is it vintage? It's about 15, 16 years old. Does that make it vintage? Comments in the comments section. Panathinaikos jersey. This is pretty slick. The fluoro. Sometimes wear it on the job site if I ever attended one. I love this kit, but it's just yet another reason why you should get around my good friends at False 9 Threads, street apparel with iconic football moments emblazoned upon the t-shirt. Because, yes, I look very good right now, but I am marinating in my own body odor right now, and I've not been wearing it for too long. It's not from today. It's not fresh body odor. It's fermented, aged body odor from either the time that I wore it for one podcast episode during the World Cup or the last time I played a kick around game wearing this, which would have been like when I was 16. So a good almost 15 years ago now, which is not a good thing if you're trying to be fashionable. You don't want to be stinking when you're out. And sometimes you need a way of beaconing. You need a way of signaling to other football fans that you're ready to chat some fucking round ball. And sometimes it's risky when you're wearing civilian clothing to just say to somebody, hey, do you like football? Because they might turn around at some fucking pub in Petersham or something and say to you, yeah, bro, I'm a massive Dragons supporter. And then you're just stuck there awkwardly. So if you wear an iconic football moment, say the Roberto Baggio scoring an amazing goal on your streetwear, that signals to another football nerd that you are ready to chat some shit. So go to False 9 Threads on their Instagram, send them a message and get some cool gear. Alright, we are going to chat about some Premier League shit and some Serie A shit. And that's it basically for today because I only really like those two leagues. And I'm only going to mention the Bundesliga or Le French League or La Liga if something funny happens in there. I'm not going to watch it. You can go to a different podcast if you want that shit. Premier League was quite interesting this weekend. We had most of the big boys other than Manchester United dropping points. In fact, I think all of them dropped points. Unless, of course, you consider my boys Brighton and Hove Albion a member of the big boys, which I'm starting to. But we'll get to them because bottom dwellers, recently managerless, and then subsequently manager full Everton at home defeating league leaders Arsenal. It wasn't comfortable for Everton, but they did a Sean Dyche job. The match made in heaven. James Tarkowski, Sean Dyche, the Burnley connection comes good. The big boy scores, and Arsenal are handed their second defeat of the season after their loss to Manchester United. Thankfully, it wasn't very consequential thanks to the matches that happened elsewhere. But man, watched a bit of this game. This Onana character, not the goalkeeper who plays for Inter, the Belgium midfielder who has been there all season, looks like one of the best midfielders in the entire Premier League. Absolutely bossed the midfield, and I believe should Everton stay up, this guy's going to play a key part, and it'll be yet another indictment of the poor managerial skills of one Frank Lampard, that he had this diamond in the rough and he just couldn't thaw it. Is that what you do to diamonds? Do you thaw them? That's ice. However you get diamonds out of the rough, he was unable to do that verb. So, Sean Dyche, I fucking love Sean Dyche. I don't know about you guys, but like that time that it was snowing and freezing and he was just wearing a shirt, no jacket. Like, we get it, bro. You're a fucking man. He had no hair. He's got no hair either. Maybe all of his cold receptors are around his mouth. So all he needs is the goatee to protect from the cold. Either way, Sean Dyche is the fucking man. And let's see what Everton do. From Arsenal's perspective, they still created many, many chances. You know, the goal is from a corner, which is from a counter-attack. Everton defended resolutely and then hit him in numbers on the break, which is something they never really did under Frank Lampard, who still, like, he Frank Lampard's teams don't know how to attack or defend. It's weird. Nonetheless, Arsenal are fine. Not only mathematically are they fine, but they are also strategically fine. If they can recover from this loss mentally, which I think that they will, they have Man City next week at the Etihad. That's going to be huge. If they can scrape out of there without losing, I think the wheels are relatively still on track for them to win the Premier League. If they don't, though, it will be very funny because Jorginho, who we spoke about last week, has come to Arsenal and he basically came on and Everton scored immediately. So if that guy moved to Arsenal mid-season and doesn't end up winning the Premier League, that'll be pretty funny, even though I really, really like him as a player. I just like laughing at misfortune because I'm a sad little man in my sad little room. Anyway, Man City did not take advantage of Arsenal's slip-up because Anthony's prediction was right. Yes, haha. They've now gone to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium 5 times in a row and not won, and they've lost 4 times, including last week in which Harry Kane equaled. No, he now has the record over Jimmy Greaves. He is the number 1 scorer in the history of Spurs, which is not a trophy. It is not something you can put on your mantelpiece. It's not something you can tell your grandchildren you won. It is not something that you can tangibly hold. Maybe they'll probably erect a trophy of him somewhere. And hopefully, like, with his hairline still intact by the time he retires, because that thing's been hanging on since he was fucking 22 years old. Nonetheless, Harry Kane will be a Tottenham legend if he re-signs, which he's still yet to re-sign. He will retire with Tottenham, which means he will probably retire trophyless, but this is a great achievement for a great player. Man City were fine, but I think tactically they were a bit... I don't know, he played Haaland and Alvarez together up front, seemed to run into each other a lot. Haaland didn't have a shot. One of those Pep Guardiola overthinking moments, but he's going to have a lot of those coming up. We'll get to that in just a second. The thing that stood out for me the most from this match is, of course, fucking Jack Grealish and his socks, man. Any long-time listeners of the podcast will know that I do not like Jack Grealish whatsoever. He is the 6th or 7th most expensive footballer in history. And no, it's more than that. It's more than that. He's like 7th or 8th. No, doesn't matter. His socks keep getting lower, and I keep getting angry at it. He looks like if you ever did after school football training, he looks like the kid that forgot their like sport uniform and had to train in like their school shoes, and the socks are going all the way down because they didn't have shin pads. It's annoying, especially with the way he plays, kind of like dandy legs, really annoying. I don't like him. I don't like him, and I'm glad that he's on Man City. I'm glad that he's playing for Man City because, boy, Manchester City are in a bit of trouble. And as a Juventus fan, I'm very happy that it's not just us. Manchester City are being investigated by the Premier League. Actually, sorry, the investigation has ended. They are being indicted by the Premier League for some violations of Premier League financial fair play. Now, I'm going to try and, as we know today, tomorrow when this episode is released, there may be way more new information and I'm going to look like a fucking idiot. But as far as I know right now, I'm going to try and nutshell it really quick, especially for those of you who only listen to this podcast, because I know that there are some of you that for whatever reason choose to get all of your football information from an Australian stand-up comedian. Power to you. And thank you. Thank you so much. I personally think that that's a great idea because I know my shit, but you know, like it's an unorthodox play. Let's just call it that. Anyway, so this is what's happening with the Manchester City situation. So this stems from a Portuguese hacker who in the mid 2010s, this Portuguese hacker hacked into clubs and agents and managers and certain players' emails and databases and basically leaked a whole bunch of information, including the settled upon and hushed up Cristiano Ronaldo sexual assault case. That's how the world found out about that. And he uncovered a whole bunch of shady Manchester City shit, which eventually led to a UEFA investigation. However, for UEFA to investigate Manchester City, the statute of limitations expired and they were unable to bring any charges to them. The Premier League doesn't have such short statute of limitations for their investigations and have been investigating Manchester City for the last 4 years, and the investigation has culminated in these, which we're not sure exactly the nature of these charges just yet, but it is basically about Manchester City trying to circumvent fair play by... So, for those completely not in the know, the basic tenets of financial fair play are that individual clubs need to be self-revenue making. So they cannot just have a rich owner come in and go, here's the money. Like the clubs need to be generating enough revenue to be able to spend their profits on players, etc., etc. Now, plenty of clubs, PSG included, Juve included, Chelsea, I assume, included. I don't know how Chelsea are planning to get away with this. And I guess Real Madrid and Barcelona too have found creative ways around this. And the way that Manchester City have found a creative, I did inverted commas for the listeners only, way around this is by having their sponsors, and sponsorships are as big a extra source of revenue as any for clubs. Their sponsorships a lot of them basically come from companies that are more or less owned by the same company that owns them, the Saudis, right? So whether it's Etihad Airways or whatever the Saudi sovereign state also owns, they are the official sponsors, and it can just be a point where Man City under the table pay back the companies for whatever funds come in, which can be registered as funds that can be used to buy whoever the fuck they want. This is illegal. This is not compliant with financial fair play. And who knows what could happen, because the Premier League, unlike Serie A, is not renowned historically for chopping the heads off their own snakes. So we don't know exactly the depth of which Manchester City are going to be punished. It's fascinating to think about what might happen. I don't want their titles to be revoked, because that would suck, because that means that Liverpool and Man U are going to all get 3 titles each, and a title is going to go to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and a title is going to go to Brendan Rodgers. 2 titles, 1 will go to Sir Alex Ferguson, 2 will go to Jurgen Klopp, and 1 will go to Jose Mourinho, who I don't have a problem with all of those guys padding out their resumes with an extra title, but Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Brendan Rodgers, no, you don't get to just fucking have one. So I really hope that doesn't happen. I also hope that doesn't happen from a fairness standpoint, because the club may have done something terrible, but the players haven't, the coach hasn't. Pep Guardiola, for his money, said that if the club did lie to me, in as far as telling me that they've done nothing wrong, I will walk. So it'd be interesting to see if he walks now, if he walks at the end of the season. This is a very, very fascinating situation to follow. But that's basically what's happening in a nutshell. We'll chat about it more next week, I assume, because more things will come out. Liverpool, who will receive 3 of those titles, really badly need those titles, because is it not going well for Liverpool right now. My prediction that Liverpool would come good after the World Cup is looking stupider and stupider by the week. They were carved apart by Wolverhampton Wanderers, especially in the first half. Second half, they basically just sat back and hit them with a counter-attack goal that condemned them to a 3-0 defeat, and the cycle is well and truly over, guys. This Liverpool are in big, big trouble. They need a total refresh of everything. Their defense looks abhorrent, and this Jurgen Klopp 7th season syndrome, it's creepy, don't you think? For those not in the know, at Mainz, at Borussia Dortmund, and at Liverpool, his 7th season at all 3 clubs has ended catastrophically, especially when compared to the previous ones. I think Mainz, he got them relegated in his final season, having done very, very well there. Borussia Dortmund, they finished out of the Champions League, and I think he was sacked halfway through the season, and now this is what's happening to Liverpool. So very interesting. Liverpool, on current form, they are not... the idea that they would usurp Brighton or Brentford or even Chelsea in the positions ahead of them is ludicrous. So this could be very bad for Liverpool, and what happens to them moving forward, question marks, because they don't have the financial might of Chelsea. Chelsea will cop finishing 9th, and then like throw absolutely fucking everything into it to finish not ninth the next season. Liverpool are not, unless the sale happens, which it's still being mooted to happen, but we don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Man United, the only of the big teams to not drop points this weekend, defeated Crystal Palace in a fun game in which there was a big brawl, seemingly out of nowhere. Like, it wasn't a very heated game beforehand, but there was a big brawl out of nowhere when Anthony got kicked the shit out of him, and a whole bunch of players came in, and then Casemiro, whose name is actually Casemiro, but he's a superstitious man, and for Sao Paulo in his first professional game, they misprinted his jersey as Casemiro, and because he's superstitious, he never changed it because he played really, really well. He's kept it as Casemiro for his entire career. Casemiro will not be playing again for Manchester United because he was sent off for putting his hands around the neck of Will Hughes to kind of remove him from the situation. He has now just come back from a ban, and he is going into another ban now. He's been a wonderful signing for Manchester United, but, I mean, a bit hard done by here. But that's the letter of the law, boys and girls. You don't put your hands on another player. They beat Crystal Palace, and they march on. They're not title contenders, guys. It's not going to happen. But they are probably going to very comfortably finish third because I think they have more firepower than Newcastle United. And I think they'll probably end up with the League Cup because I think they're going to beat Newcastle United in that too. For Manchester United fans, a very, I guess, polarizing situation has arisen for them in that Mason Greenwood, who had been indicted, or not indicted, he had been charged with multiple counts of sexual assault. He has been acquitted. Now, Manchester United have come out and stated that they're going to be conducting their own internal investigation. If you will recall, when the whole situation went down, he was immediately dropped and removed from the squad, and Manchester United even offered an offering whereby if you had a Mason Greenwood jersey, you could trade it in for a jersey with a different player, free of charge. So they basically just dispensed with him, washed their hands clean of Mason Greenwood, even though he looked to be becoming a phenomenal player, and they could really use him right now because they need a good number 9. So my interpretation of that situation was that where there's smoke, there's fire, and given how quickly they dispensed with him, they must have known that this guy was a bit of a bad egg. He must have been a bit of a shitbag and had priors with this kind of shit. And so as soon as the law got involved, they were like, fuck off, we don't need you anymore, we're not standing behind this player, which Manchester City didn't do with Mendy, nor did they do that with Adam Johnson. So it's not a thing that clubs tend to stand by their players until they are proven guilty. So this could go in any way. I hope that, like I said, usually with things like this where there is smoke, there is fire. And I hope Mason Greenwood doesn't get to have a career as a professional footballer because he doesn't deserve it. Fuck him. For Crystal Palace's value, Patrick Vieira came out last week and was interviewed about why there were no black managers in the Premier League other than him, and he said he doesn't get it, and there's some kind of prejudice. That could well be the case. I don't know enough about the situation to be able to say yes or no. It is something that is a little noteworthy that a man who was a player of Patrick Vieira's caliber is the only black manager in the Premier League. There are plenty of black managers all around Europe. Time will tell. But as a way of kind of reversing that, basically every single player in Crystal Palace's starting 11 is black, which is fucking cool, except for Will Hughes, who's the whitest person on the face of the planet. So Patrick Vieira doing his best to turn around and to re-swing that particular racial pendulum in the Premier League. We love to see it. And one of those players, Jeffrey Schlupp, scored a fucking sick goal against Manchester United. Really, really cool. Side of the foot, flick on to make it 2-1. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Newcastle, who are undefeated in the Premier League since August, which is remarkable. Absolutely fucking remarkable. Drew, so they keep rolling on, even though, their firepower hasn't been as potent as it was prior to the World Cup. I would love to see Brighton finish ahead of them, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. They're not going to finish ahead of Man United. We'll see how that goes. Chelsea unable to beat Fulham. Another club in weird kind of stasis at the moment. But I watched Enzo Fernandez playing. Like, imagine being this guy a year ago. Enzo Fernandez is playing in River Plate. Enzo Fernandez is playing for River Plate. He makes a 13 million euro move to Benfica in the summer, having been chased by a whole bunch of clubs, including Juventus. Not happy about that. He then goes on to play remarkable in his 6 months for Benfica, wins the World Cup, and becomes the most expensive midfielder of all time, and is an automatic starter in Chelsea's midfield. What a fucking turnaround for this young lad. I wish him the best. Chelsea, for their money, have hired Gilbert Inoka, a former All Blacks mental skills coach who is known to bringing a winning culture to clubs and has a no dickheads policy, per his own quote. There are a lot of dickheads at Chelsea, so remains to be seen who sticks around under this guy. I kind of found it strange that, like, shouldn't the manager be the mental skills coach? You know what I mean? Like, shouldn't the morale and the like the winning mentality, shouldn't that all come from the top down? That's weird to me. I like Graham Potter. He made it a monster out of Brighton. I hope everything goes well for him, for Chelsea and the club that I used to support, which is now kind of funny when I'm thinking about, like, Chelsea stole everything from Brighton, but Brighton stole me from Chelsea, and I'm more valuable than Graham Potter and Mark Cucurella put together, and you all know it. So that's interesting. We should see how that goes. Socceroo Hare Sutar. That's right. Socceroo, who speaks with this accent because he's Australian. Makes his debut for Leicester, scores an own goal, which was fairly avoidable. Leicester do defeat Aston Villa 4-2, having gone 2-1 down, and remains to be seen. I think he chose the wrong club to go to, but you're not going to say no to a Premier League opportunity. I hope Hare Sutar ends up staying in the Premier League for a very long time, because I think he's an excellent player, and he represents the Socceroos despite being Scottish. Here he is again, the fucking Aussie football hater, Anthony Locascio. While we're here, let me just once again attempt to refresh my perspective on Australian football, because I had yet another video get yet another round of very upset comments from some people last week. I am not an Australian football hater. I am an Australian football lover. I am a guy who lives in Australia, who was born in Australia, who has grown up in Australia, who will always live in Australia, unless I live overseas for a little bit, but who will always love Australia, and who will always resent having to wake up at 2 o'clock in the fucking morning to watch good football. And I see no reason why this country, a first world country, ladies and gentlemen, a country that is at the forefront of technological and sport and so many different innovations around the world. One of the top superpowers of the world is Australia. A first world country should be a first world power in the first sport in the world. That's all I've been saying this whole time. I don't think the excuses are good enough. Population, football culture, prevalence of other sports, fuck off. These are all things that can be overcome. I want to know what is going on. SBS helped me make my documentary. And you know what? I was thinking about it over the weekend, and a number one exemplar of why none of those excuses are viable is if you look at the fact that 2 of the top 5 players, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, in the Premier League are from Norway. 2 of the best 5 players in the Premier League this season hail from a country that has never had a decent footballing pedigree. They have never produced a world-class player before now. Sorry, Yana Gefjortov. And now they have 2 of the best players in the world and a whole host of other players coming through. Is that a coincidence? No. They've invested the right time and money, and Norway has a minuscule population. They have a minuscule size compared to Australia. They are not a world player. And they are so much more prevalent in other sports. Norway. Anyway, I'm not gonna put this up as a video because it's not topical like it was during the World Cup. You know, there's only so much I can harp on this shit. Am I a bad person for wanting the football in the country that I live in to be good? Am I? Am I a bad person for shitting on farcical controversies and average football and pretty mediocre output? Yes, the Socceroos made the round of 16 of the fucking World Cup. I know, I was there. They were knocked out by the eventual winners. I know, I was there. Why is that such a surprise? Why does that have to be such a mold breaker? Why does that have to be such a monumental cataclysmic occurrence? Why isn't it something that we demand? Why isn't it something that we want? In 10 years, maybe even less, Norway are going to be the next generation's Belgium. You understand? Norway are going to be the next golden generation. And maybe they might make a quarterfinal or a semi-final at some point in the Haaland and Odegaard years. Maybe. And that's going to be remarkable. And they're going to deserve it for having produced Haaland and Odegaard. Why don't we have a Haaland or an Odegaard that actually comes from this fucking country, unlike fucking Hari Sutar? Anyway, my boys Brighton won again. They almost didn't, but they did thanks to a late 83rd minute header from who else but Kaoru Mitoma? My fucking boy, my favourite player in the Premier League right now. I had a dream last night, that he came to Juve because Roberto De Zerbi came to Juve, which would be oh man. A lot of pundits and commentators have said that Roberto De Zerbi is not ready to be a top-level manager. I think what he's proving right now at Brighton and Hove Albion is that if they give him the proper infrastructure and the proper club structure system, he will be great. If Kaoru Mitoma came to Juve, oh boy. I mean, we've already got Filip Kostic and Federico Chiesa who could theoretically both operate on the left wing, but I just love him, man. I love him so much. Jesse Marsch is sacked by Leeds United. They are 17th. He is the 6th manager sacked this season in the Premier League. Unfortunately for Team America, who leads Brendan Aronson, Weston McKennie, and Tyler Adams are now daddyless over there. Not sure who's going to replace him. Marcelo Bielsa has turned down the opportunity. We'll see who comes in at Leeds. They need someone quick, smart. They've got the players to stay up, and I hope they do because Leeds are an historic club of the Premier League, and I hope that they're there. Jesse Marsch, the Ted Lasso impressionist, he's gone, and it was kind of sad because the game at the weekend, the one that ultimately put the nail in his coffin, I think he had bird shit on his jacket the whole time. Like he had some shit on the back of his coat the whole time. Looked like bird shit. I felt really bad for him because I knew when I was watching the highlights for it that he had already been sacked, and I'm like, man, what a way to go out. But it certainly plays into the anti-American agenda that is permeating in England. And that is all we're going to speak about England because there was some fun shit in Serie A. In this round. You don't want to be burping on the podcast, man, but sometimes when you just... Man, I don't want to... I've done this a few times. I don't want to just blow my own horn here. But the fact that I do this breakless for 45 minutes and just like keep it flowing like this every week, you guys are fucking blessed. You guys are lucky to have me. Seriously. So there's going to be a burp here and there. I'm not going to edit it out because I riffed on the burp and we're still in a good position. Italy! Where dreams are made of. Had some fun games this weekend. None more fun than the Milan derby, which, as I predicted as well, was won by Inter against an absolutely hopeless Milan. Like Milan, it took them until 75 minutes to have a meaningful attack. Inter really should have won this game by a lot more. They're a bit profligate, but they do win thanks to Lautaro Martinez, who is a fucking phenomenal striker, man. He is very, very good. Anybody that just watched the World Cup and doesn't know about this guy will think that he's like a bit of a Higuain. He choked in big occasions and he was replaced by Julian Alvarez in that team. And you know what? I would say that the Higuain analogy is apt purely on the basis that this is an exceptional player, like a player whose scalp at the very least is pressed right up against that glass ceiling of world class, if not about to break through. At club level, he's fucking excellent. On his day, he's absolutely tremendous, and he is the symbol and the leader and the captain of Inter. And it's good for Serie A that he really loves Inter and he's going to stick around because he will have many, many suitors, many Harry suitors across the continent. Not Inter are good, and I think they'll finish second because they're clearly the second best team in Italy at the moment. It's Milan who are a much more interesting proposition. Still the champions from last season, like in an absolute horrible funk right now. None of their players are in form. Rafael Leao looks disinterested and almost certain to leave at the end of the season, especially if they don't make the Champions League, which I don't think they will. Because I think Milan are out. So Inter are a lock for second. Napoli are going to win the whole fucking thing. We'll talk about that in a second. And between Atalanta, Lazio, and Roma, you've got three teams vying for those last two positions, all of whom are in much, much better form and much better than Milan. So I don't see him winning. I think the Stefano Pioli thing is done. I'm glad that he got to win a Scudetto because he has been a manager that deserves it, but he is also a manager for whom the wheels fall off very hard and fast. It happened at Fiorentina, it happened at Lazio, it happened at Inter, and it has happened at Milan. I think they should sack him now. I think they should bring in a recently jobless, having been sacked by Valencia, Gennaro Gattuso. They should put him in as the caretaker manager for the rest of the season, and they should try and steady this ship. Rafael Leao, the crown jewel of Milan, will almost certainly leave at the end of the season. I don't know where he's going to go because Chelsea always seemed like the number one suitor for him. Unless they don't sign João Felix, which I think they're pretty keen to. I don't see where they have the room because they are going to sign Nkunku and they just don't have the room for him. He's not a traditional number 9. He's not a number 9 at all. Like, he's got something Thierry Henry-ish about him, but he's definitely much better coming off the wing. So I don't see Man United as a good landing spot for him. If somehow Kylian Mbappe leaves PSG, or if Lionel Messi decides to not stick around, PSG would be a good landing spot for him. Or maybe, given that he's Portuguese, he ends up at Wolves. But he certainly is not going to be at Milan next season, which is kind of sad. Napoli win again. Victor Osimhen is one of the best strikers in the world. The Napoli project is looking really, really good. I eat humble pie. They're amazing. They're going to win the Scudetto. And I can see them making an actual serious dent in the Champions League because they're so far ahead in Italy and they have so much decent depth that, it's going real good for Napoli. Going pretty good for Roma, who beat Empoli. But what is more pertinent for me, or what I took away from this match, go and watch the highlights purely to see this. Guillermo Vicario, who is the goalkeeper for Empoli, who has played for a number of Serie A teams recently. He's 26. He has been linked with some big boys, including Juve, to take over from Wojciech Szczesny. He made just a, outlandish triple save against Roma. A shot came in from Pellegrini, I think. He parries it. He's on his ass. He gets back up, makes a diving save from the follow-up shot from nearby, and the ball goes up in the air, and from close range, Tammy Abraham heads it, and then Vicario, with his trailing leg, sticks his leg up above his head and saves it, and the ball doesn't go in. It's fucking ridiculous, man. Sticking with Italy and players who are fucking ridiculous, Nicola Zaniolo is almost certainly about to be sold to Galatasaray. The Serie A retirement home featuring the likes of Mauro Icardi, Sergio Oliveira, Mertens, Torreira, a whole bunch of Patrick Van Aanholt, who never played in Serie A, but another fucking has-been. Galatasaray are going to pick up him too, and for a 23-year-old, this is a really sad kind of ejection from one of Italy's big clubs. He will have a $35 million release clause for the summer. I can't see him sticking around in the Turkish league for more than this 6 months. Hopefully he rejuvenates his career and his mental and physical state, because he just hasn't been the same since those ACL injuries. The funny part is that Roma will sell him for $22 million, but 15% of that does go to Inter as per their stipulated agreement when he signed for Roma from Inter. This is a player who, along with Federico Chiesa, is like the kind of prodigious talent that Italy do not produce very often, and it's a shame that his career he might be going down a Mario Balotelli path. I hope not, because there's speculation that he comes from a shit family, like a family of fucking hillbillies, and Italian hillbillies are scary, man. Italian hillbillies are not, they're not folksy, you know, they're not quaint, they are pretty fucking rough. And I don't think he's received the right kind of career advice. He clashed with Mourinho, and Mourinho managed to convince Roma to dispense with him pretty quickly. The same thing happened with Afenajan. The same thing happened with Rick Karsdorp. Mourinho is on the verge of securing a Champions League return for Roma, having secured the first ever Conference League trophy for them in the first season. That's pretty damn good for the special one. I fucking love the guy. And I really like Zaniolo, so let's hope that he can make a comeback from this, because, yeah, he has the talent. Okay, so this week I've decided to not do a lasagna. This week I've decided to court some further controversy and some further polarization among people that don't actually listen or watch the podcast, but just kind of comment on the clips. But we can have a chat about it if you guys like. Still don't see too many comments on the Instagram, but thanks to everybody that's leaving the comments on the YouTube. I appreciate that. Leave some reviews if you like. Whatever you want. Get involved. I am going to do my top 10 players of 2022. It's something that I've seen a few other podcasts do recently. I'm like, fuck it. Imitation, the sincerest form of flattery. Good artists borrow, great artists steal. So, without any further ado, my top 10 players of 2022 with no goalkeepers included, because I genuinely think that they do a totally different thing, so I don't want to include any goalkeepers. I've kept this a mix of talent, output, trophies, and just like kind of general the eye test. So this is it. Number 10, Ruben Dias, the best defender in the world for my money, wins the Premier League, has a great combination of incredible leadership and basically every single physical attribute. He's fast, he's quick, he's technical, he's real good. I love me a bit of Ruben Dias. He's number 10. His Portuguese compatriot, Rafael Leao, in at number 9. The Serie A MVP, even though Milan really won the title last year because Inter and Napoli decided they didn't want to win it. Rafael Leao was still absolutely unplayable. The only X factor in Milan, and on his day, the most devastating player in Serie A. Number 8 is Robert Lewandowski, whose goal output never stops going. It's just incredible. He won the Bundesliga last season. He looks on track to win La Liga this year with Barcelona. Made that much vaunted move, but other than that, didn't do much for Poland in the World Cup, even though he finally scored his first World Cup goal. He's in at number 8. Nothing more needs to be said about Lewandowski. His usurper as probably the best number 9 in the world, Erling Haaland, in at number 7. Recently, Jamie Carragher actually posited that Erling Haaland has gone to the wrong team. That he's very good on the counter-attack, and with the way Manchester City play, he is not being used to the best of his ability despite scoring all of these goals, and that his output is somewhat being stifled by the Manchester City system. I'm not going to go ahead and disagree with that, especially when you look at how different and how much more of a focal point Gabriel Jesus had been before he got injured at Arsenal. I think had Gabriel Jesus had this season away from Man City before Haaland went to City, I dare say it may have swayed his decision to go to a different club. Perhaps he's still going to be extraordinarily successful there, and his career is just getting started. So he's in at number 7. Number 6, Federico Valverde, who has just turned into this versatile midfield linchpin with a penchant for scoring an absolute wonder goal, gets the assist with a scuffed shot in the Champions League final, wins the Champions League, wins La Liga, absolute bona fide first name on the team, well, one of the first names on the team sheet for Carlo Ancelotti, and yeah, he is my number 6, very good player. Kevin De Bruyne is in at number 5. Same reasons basically for Ruben Dias in terms of the success. He dropped off a little bit towards this season, even though he still looked really good in the early parts of the season. Didn't do too much for Belgium in the World Cup, but he did win the Premier League as probably Man City's best player, and on his day, a prodigiously gifted midfielder, probably the best midfielder of this last mini generation. If not him, it is the guy who I've got in at number 4, Luka Modric. Again, same trophy haul as the Real Madrid contingent of this list. And then you have to consider that Croatia made the fucking semi-finals of the World Cup on the back of how good he was. Somehow at the age of 604, Luka Modric is still one of the best players in the world, which is remarkable. Number 3 for me is Kylian Mbappe. It was really hard to put him here, but he still plays for PSG. He is, yes, he was top goal scorer as PSG won the Ligue 1 title, but yeah, didn't really make a dent in the Champions League last season. They could make one this year. We'll see. He was absolutely unplayable at the World Cup. That hat-trick that he scored in the World Cup final and becoming the top goal scorer of the World Cup is enough to earn him this spot as number 3. Number 2 is the Ballon d'Or incumbent Karim Benzema. Nothing needs to be said other than he is the leader of this Real Madrid team, and he was the best. He was voted the best player in the world last year, and thankfully for him, that Ballon d'Or was given out before the World Cup was over, because otherwise it may well have been handed to my number 1 pick for the best player of 2022, purely on the basis of him being the lead protagonist in finally bringing the World Cup back to Argentina and completing his football CV. It is, of course, the king, the GOAT, the best, Lionel Messi, number 1. So again, we've got Ruben Diaz, Rafael Leao, Robert Lewandowski, Haaland, Federico Valverde, Kevin De Bruyne, Modric, Mbappe, Benzema, and Messi. That's my top 10 players of 2022. Let's get into your sitter of the week. It was signposted before. I gave a little foreshadowing before when I mentioned who Nicola Zaniolo could be turning into the next. It is, of course, you guys will remember Mario Balotelli's weird backheeled sitter that he missed against LA Galaxy in July 2011 in a friendly in America, which is the match is basically remembered by this weird fucking backheel that he did, threw on goal in the most nonchalant Balotelli way. Mancini absolutely went fucking furious at him. He had already put them 1-0 up against LA Galaxy, and then on the 28th minute, he was put through by a trademark David Silva through ball. He was clear on goal, beat the keeper. Instead of deciding to try and score, he just spun and harmlessly backheeled it wide. Mancini and the teammates were all annoyed, as were the spectators in the stadium. Lots of boos rung out. He maintains that he heard a whistle go up, so he just fucked around because he thought he was offside, but, it's Balo. So, what do we know about it? Of course, Balotelli would go on to score more goals than he ever did for Man City that season. He got 17, and he got the assist for Aguero's winning goal, in which Man City won their first ever Premier League title. Big games this weekend, guys. Before my camera runs out of batteries, hopefully I don't lose it here. We've got the Merseyside derby, who's a who give a fuck match. I hope Everton win because that'll be so funny. Lazio Atalanta are a big one. Battle of teams that could feasibly do quite well. And Manchester City Arsenal on Thursday. Catch you next week. Raise your daughters. Big love. Ciao.